Okay, we are back with part two of this week's reading of the Messianic Jewish Family Bible, Tree of Life Version, TLV, and we are doing this week Exodus chapters 5 through 15. And that's a lot of ground to cover, and we're going to cover it. It's exciting things that we're going to be reading about, exciting things that God does for his people. So as we ended the last chapter before I had to take a break, God was making a promise. He made a promise. Adonai made this promise to Moses that he was going to deliver his people. And to Moses, it wasn't quite looking, and to the people, it wasn't quite looking that way, because things had gotten a little bit worse than what they had been. We also went over the covenant. Actually, Adonai actually reminded Moses of the covenant that he made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and also went over some of the family names and some of the Levite tribe. And as we're going to later learn, that Levite tribe becomes the priestly tribe. Chapter 7 actually does contain, about the middle of this chapter, the 10 plagues begin, and that is blood. But we're going to start the beginning of this chapter. So Adonai said to Moses, "See, I have set you as God to Pharaoh, and Aaron your brother will be your prophet. You are to speak all that I command you, and Aaron your brother is to speak to Pharaoh, so that he will let Bnei Israel go out of his land. Yet I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. But Pharaoh will not listen to you. So I will lay my hand upon Egypt, and bring forth my armies, my people Bnei Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great judgments. The Egyptians will know that I am Adonai, when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring out Bnei Israel from among them." So Moses and Aaron did as Adonai commanded them. Moses was 80 years old, and Aaron 83 years old when they spoke to Pharaoh. So, when you look at the old movies, the Ten Commandments, you think they're young, they're still young. Well, they're old men, actually, as they're doing this. I mean, Moses had spent a great deal of time, and actually, this is the last third of Moses' life has begun. Because the first 40 he was in Egypt, then he spent 40 kind of on the run, in the with Jethro, his father-in-law, being a shepherd, when he had to flee from Egypt after he killed an Egyptian. And now he is 80 years old, and coming and confronting Pharaoh. Amazing, huh? Adonai told Moses and Aaron, "When Pharaoh speaks to you, saying, 'Prove yourself with a miracle,' then you are to say to Aaron, 'Take your staff and cast it down before Pharaoh, so that it may become a serpent.'" So Moses and Aaron went in to Pharaoh and did as Adonai had commanded. Aaron threw down his staff before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. Then Pharaoh called for the wise men and the sorcerers, and they too, the magicians of Egypt, did the same with their secret arts. For each man threw down his staff, and they became serpents. But Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. Yet Pharaoh's heart was hardened, so he did not listen to them, just as Adonai had said. The 10 plagues begin. Blood. Then Adonai said to Moses, "Pharaoh's heart is stubborn. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning as he is coming out to the water, and stand ready to meet him by the bank of the Nile. Take the staff that was transformed into a serpent in your hand. You are to say to him, 'Adonai, God of the Hebrews has sent me to you, saying, Let my people go, so they may serve me in the wilderness. And behold, you have not listened.' This is what Adonai says. By this you will know that I am Adonai. Behold, I will strike the waters that are in the river with the staff that is in my hand, and they will be turned to blood. The fish that are in the river will die, the river will become foul, and the Egyptians will hate to drink the water from the Nile. Adonai said to Moses, say to Aaron, take your staff and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over their rivers, over their streams, over their pools, and over their ponds, so that they become blood. They will be blood There will be blood throughout all the land of Egypt, even in wooden and stone containers everywhere. I mean, they couldn't, the pitchers that they had, in other words, their stone containers, their wooden containers containing water, was all going to be turned to blood. So Moses and Aaron did as Adonai commanded. He lifted up the staff and struck the waters that were in the river in the sight of Pharaoh and his servants, and all the waters of the Nile turned to blood. When the fish that were in the river died, the river became so foul that the Egyptians could not drink water from the river. The blood was throughout all the land of Egypt. But the magicians of Egypt did the same with their secret arts. So Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he did not listen to them, just as Adonai had said. Pharaoh turned and went into his house and did not even take it to heart. So all the Egyptians dug around the river for water to drink because they could not drink the water from the Nile. 7 days were fulfilled after Adonai had struck the Nile. Then Adonai said to Moses, go to Pharaoh and say to him, this is what Adonai says. Let my people go, so they may serve me. If you refuse to let them go, see, I will strike all your territory with frogs. The river will swarm with frogs. They will go up and enter your house, into your bedroom, upon your bed, into the houses of your servants, upon your people, into your ovens and in your kneading bowls. The frogs will climb up on you, your people, and all your servants. So that is chapter 7. Pretty exciting, huh? And in the New Testament and in Acts, we need to look here and recap on some of this because it's actually discussed in the book of Acts, starting with Acts 17. But as the time drew near for the promise God had sworn to Abraham, the people increased and multiplied in Egypt until there arose another king over Egypt who knew nothing about Joseph. Dealing with our people with cruel cunning, this king mistreated our fathers and forced them to abandon their infants so that they would not survive. Satan worked on that Pharaoh for wanting to kill the male infants at that time, to stop the seed. At this time Moses was born extraordinary before God. For 3 months he was nurtured in his father's house, and when he was set outside, Pharaoh's daughter took him and raised him as her own son. Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and he was powerful in his words and deeds. When he was approaching 40 years of age, it came into his heart to visit his brothers Benaiah, Israel. When he saw one of them being treated unjustly, he went to the defense of the oppressed man and avenged him by striking down the Egyptian. He was assuming that his brothers understood that by his hand God was delivering them, but they did not understand. So on the next day he appeared to them as they were fighting. He tried to reconcile them in shalom, in peace, saying, men, you are brothers. Why do you wrong one another? But the one doing wrong to his neighbor pushed him away, saying, who appointed you ruler and judge over us? You don't want to kill me as you killed the Egyptians yesterday, do you? At this remark, Moses fled and became an exile in the land of Midian, where he became the father of 2 sons. When 40 years had passed, an angel appeared to him in the wilderness of Mount Sinai in the flame of a burning bush. When Moses saw it, he was amazed at the sight. But when he came up to look, there came the voice of Adonai, I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Moses trembled in fear and did not dare to look. But Adonai said to him, take the sandals off your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. I have surely seen the oppression of my people in Egypt and have heard their groaning, and I have come down to deliver them. Now come, let me send you to Egypt. This Moses, whom they rejected, saying, who appointed you as ruler and judge, is the one whom God sent as both ruler and redeemer by the hand of the angel who appeared to him in the bush. This man led them out, performing wonders and signs in the land of Egypt and at the Red Sea and in the wilderness for 40 years. This is the Moses who said to Bani Israel, God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among your brothers. This is the one who was in the community in the wilderness with the angel who spoke to him on Mount Sinai, and with our fathers. He was received living word to pass on to us. We're going to get into that in the future. But that is reviewed again in the New Testament, and that is from the book of Acts, chapter 7. Okay, we're going to move on to chapter 8 here, and chapter 8 continues the plagues. These are the frogs, the gnats, and the flies. Ugh, sounds yucky, huh? Then Adonai told Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your hand with your staff over the rivers, canals, pools, and cause frogs to come up over the land of Egypt. So Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land. But the magicians, can't the magicians did the same with their secret art and brought up frogs over the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, pray to Adonai that he would take the frogs away from me and from my people. Then I will let the people go, so they may sacrifice to Adonai. Moses answered Pharaoh, boast about me after I pray for you. When am I to pray for you, your servants and your people, that the frogs would be cut off from you and your houses and remain only in the Nile? Tomorrow, he said. So he said, well, let it happen according to your word, so you may know that there is none like Adonai our God. The frogs will depart from you, from your houses, from your servants, and from your people. They will remain only in the Nile. After Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh, Moses cried out to Adonai concerning the frogs which he had brought upon Pharaoh. So Adonai acted according to the word of Moses, and the frogs died out in the houses, the courts, and the fields. They piled them together in large heaps, and the land stank. But when Pharaoh saw that there was relief, he hardened his heart and did not listen to them, just as Adonai had said. So Adonai said to Moses, tell Aaron, stretch out your staff and strike the dust of the earth, and it will become gnats throughout the land of Egypt. So they did. When Aaron stretched out his hand with his staff and struck the dust of the earth, there were gnats on men and animals. All the dust of the earth became gnats throughout all the land of Egypt. When the magicians attempted the same with their secret arts to bring forth gnats, they could not. There were gnats on men and animals. So the magician said to Pharaoh, this is the finger of God. But Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he did not listen to them, just as Adonai had said. Then Adonai said to Moses, rise up early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh. As he comes to the water, say to him, this is what Adonai says, let my people go, that they may serve me. Or else, if you do not let my people go, I will send a swarm of flies on you and your servants, on your people, and into your houses. The houses of the Egyptians will be full of the swarms of flies, including the ground that they stand on. But on that day I will set apart the land of Goshen, where my people are dwelling, except no swarm of flies will be there, so that you may know that I, Adonai, am in the midst of the earth. I will make a distinction between my people and your people. By tomorrow this sign will happen. Adonai did just so. A massive swarm of flies went into the house of Pharaoh and into his servants' houses. All the land of Egypt was ruined because of the swarm of flies. So Pharaoh called for Moses and for Aaron and said, go, sacrifice to your God in the land. But Moses said, well, that would not be right, for the offerings we intend to sacrifice to Adonai our God are an abomination to the Egyptians. If we sacrifice what is an abomination to the Egyptians, wouldn't they stone us? We must walk a 3-day journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to Adonai our God, just as he tells us. Pharaoh said, I will let you go so that you may sacrifice to Adonai your God in the wilderness. Only you must not go very far away. Pray for me." So Moses said, "See, I am leaving you, and I will pray to Adonai that the swarm of flies will depart from Pharaoh, his servants, and from his people tomorrow. However, let Pharaoh no longer deal deceitfully by not letting the people go sacrifice to Adonai." Then Moses went out from Pharaoh and prayed to Adonai. Adonai acted according to the word of Moses and removed the swarm of flies from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people. Nothing remained. But Pharaoh hardened his heart this time also, and did not let the people go. So he's not learning with all this going on. There's also a little footnote here at the bottom of this page, on chapter 8, indicating that these insects, these flies, possibly might have been stinging flies. The flies like horse flies, type of flies that would sting and bite. So yeah, they were very bothersome. So I'm going to pause it now because my counter is past 16 minutes and I don't want to push my luck here. So I'm going to come back with part 3 of this week's reading.